Well,
all right, I'm gonna call this meeting to order, the Holiday Island City Planning Commission meeting of January 10th, 2023. Let's start out with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, roll call.
Chairman Keys.
Here.
Vice Chair Pittman.
Here.
Commissioner Elwood.
here.
Commissioner Graves.
Here.
Commissioner Kuhn.
Here.
Commissioner Mills.
Here.
Secretary Dumas here, all present.
All right, I'll declare a quorum. We have a motion to approve the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda.
Linda made the motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Ken seconded it. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The agenda is approved. Regular meeting minutes from December 13th. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Make a motion to approve the minutes of December 13th.
Ken made a motion to approve minutes. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Lynn seconded it. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. No reports. We'll go right on to old business. And this is the point in the meeting where I turn it over to Lynn.
Okay, we're going to go through the text that we reviewed last month, and I've made highlights of what we have affected changes on to make it easier to see. Just want to make sure that I captured it correctly. So at this point in the first section, there was nothing to deal with, and we had these signs and definitions. Nothing to deal with there today. And in the 2002, these are definitions that we had to deal with for changes in 16.40. We got some feedback going on. I'll turn your mic off there. Let's see what it says. Yeah. Nothing to change in that section. In our accessories, we had notes here from the attorney that we've had some conversation about. So I apologize, I don't have this version marked up very well. It's not marked up at all. Okay, so I can point out the problems that we have. In the discussions with the attorney, and I'm going to start referring to this document I handed out beforehand about bill of assurance. The Supreme Court judgments about governments taking away or extracting value from property owners says that we can't create an extraction in our ordinances. And he said and taught us or told us that if we have a requirement in here to require a deed of restrictions or a restriction of deeds or whatever, if we put that as a requirement, that would be constituted as an extraction. It would force a property owner to have to go to an attorney and get a document, I guess. So we can't put it in our code.
It would force the property owner to give up some property rights in order to gain approval to do something with his property, and that, I think that's where the illegal extraction comes from. Okay.
So he suggested that we work with a term called bill of assurance. And so in the handout I gave you, I found a couple citations of that. And one was that a legal document specifying the covenants and restrictive conditions applicable to a particular property. Another reference came from an ordinance in Arkansas. It's a legally binding set of rules and policies put together when a section or group of lots were developed. Their intent is to limit what property owners can do with the property. The rules set forth in the bill of assurances are enforced in a court of law. They impose restrictions on the use of land in order to protect the property owners and to ensure the value and enjoyment of adjoining land. And then there's a last sentence of that next piece is a bill of assurance shall contain reference to the approval of the final plat. The next page, what I handed out was the communication that I sent, and it comes down to an offering that the attorney made in the third page. If you'll turn to that, he recommends that we put in language like this, to not directly reference a bill of assurance or a deed restriction directly in our ordinance. So he's suggesting language, a detached accessory unit is a subordinate building to the principal building and must be located on the same lot as the principal building. If the subordinate accessory building is located on an adjacent lot to the principal building, and if both the lots share the same ownership and zone district, the subordinate accessory building may be approved provided that adequate assurance is provided by the applicant to the city at the sole discretion of the reviewing authority of the city, that both lots with the subordinate accessory unit and the principal unit must be conveyed together in the future. So I think it covers the language that we're looking for. The last note that I put there, it's likely that we should place this in section 1640 with a reference to that section in the paragraph where we define the R1. Because the R1 definition in that section of the ordinance is about what is the residential single-family residence district all about. And we just note in there that it could be built on 2 lots. So we need to reference where we put this text in 1640.
So what would we do? Just sort of verbally suggest to them that a deed restriction would, we could approve it if there were a deed restriction without having it written in the law?
I kind of see this as a conversation where we would say that, we would read the text. You have to assure us that you'll never sell the lots separately. And then they could come back and say, yeah, I swear on everything that is good and holy that I'll never sell them together or sell them separate. And we can say,
It's not quite good.
not quite what we're looking for. And then they might say, well, what kind of assurances might you look for, Then we could say, well, maybe something like a deed restriction or something might work.
A possibility is.
In other words, we wouldn't be telling them, it's.
Is it worth going there?
Well, it's about the only way that we can allow somebody to build, a garage on the lot next door.
So that way they sort of voluntarily choose to do it without
But
being
can we still require
exactly told.
that it be connected to the lot next door by a breezeway or?
No, that's the 2 options we have. If they're physically connected, it's okay. That's one of our requirements. But if it's detached, that's the issue.
Yeah.
Detached and standing alone on the adjoining lot.
And so we've done that for 70 years, so why do we want to change?
Well, for 70 years,
I don't see how you're going to enforce it.
we've only been here for 52 years, but
You enforce it by not approving their conditional use permit.
Well, I
Unless
know
they give
that.
you the
I mean,
assurance.
if you approve them building the separate building, how do you make it assurance that they're not going to sell the properties separately?
Well, if they have a deed restriction, then they wouldn't be able to.
Well, we're not requiring that.
Well, you're not gonna approve it without it, basically.
The bill of assurance is a document that gets filed with the county court attached to the land. It'll show up in a search that a title insurance company might do if it's tried to be sold, so it'll be revealed. And in some way, that document can say that it includes text that the city needs to be notified that the property is going to be sold. I read that someplace about a sample, so the bill of assurance could say that the city of Holiday Island will be notified if this property is sold. So
I think
to answer Ken's question, that's how we find out, that's how we know, that's how we enforce it.
I think that's.
Is that after the fact? After they sold it already?
No,
And I don't know the mechanism how it gets, I've not seen one, so maybe the title insurance company notifies us, I don't know how, maybe that's what you say in the document. The title insurance company, the title search shall notify the city.
Don't even know if we're notified, what do we do about it?
Well, the document will probably spell out the fact that it's tied to the sale of the property that's adjoining. And if someone's trying to sell it independently, because of that permit that we issued, it gives the city some force, a penalty.
yeah, if they sell it like that, then, it's in violation. It's no longer a grandfathered, approved, non-conforming use, and they would have to tear the building down.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Or some other satisfactory remedy.
Well, one clue would be beforehand, when they file for the original building permit, and it's structure that could be sold easily as a standalone, if they have living quarters in it, or it's a massive warehouse size.
Well, it falls under our conditional use permit process, so the building inspector won't give them a permit. They'll say, this violates our code, you need to go to the planning commission to get a conditional use permit. So then we have a public hearing, and the affected neighbors are informed through the media and our meetings, and a decision is made.
I don't know, I may be a little fuzzy this afternoon, but does that first sentence make sense?
That he wrote?
It seems to say that it must be located on the same lot as the principal building, and then it goes on with an exception to that. Do we need another?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
See what I'm saying? If it must be this, then the rest of it would make no sense. So,
Right.
do we need to put like except for, or just, or in the first sentence, normally, and then except for,
Or with the exception.
with the exception of, because otherwise the first sentence knocks out the rest of it, the way I would read it.
Now, I think in his mind, and this is going back to the conversation we had, he started out by saying, if the person owns both lots, just have them replot it, combine the lots. And then we told them that,
We know how to do
that we
that.
can't do that either, the covenants have our, not only the covenants, but HICID and the bond issue and everything else has our hands tied on that.
I would love to be able to do that, and so would a lot of other people.
I think in his mind, this is a way of legally tying the two lots together, treat them as one lot.
No, I understand it, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
the way it reads to me is the first sentence makes the rest of it moot. So we have to put a little more language in it, like except for, or something to that regard. I'm not disagreeing, I know what the intent is, I'm just not saying, I'm not sure we're saying what we're intending to say, the way it's written.
Well, if we simply change must to may, that'll make that
There you
sentence
go.
okay.
That's what I'm talking about.
All right.
Minor change.
Or ordinarily,
Either one of them.
ordinarily must be located on the same lot
Well, it's
as the
covenants.
principal building.
That's all I'm saying, it just,
You'd even put a however.
We don't wanna leave
Yeah,
it.
however, yeah.
Yeah,
believe me, I have much experience with testifying in cases where there's an ambiguity in language. We don't want it if we can avoid it.
Absolutely. So what should I draft?
Normally must be,
Normally must be?
Normally and a
Yeah.
however.
normally must be.
Normally or
located.
generally or usually or any of those words would work.
And then, however, if the subordinate.
Yeah, I like
think
that.
that-
Semicolon, however, okay.
Sorry about that.
It's all right.
That's good.
I think that'll give us what we need.
So we need to figure out how to put that into 1640. I've got it up on the screen. So he's, they pretty much replaced the entire sentence or paragraph. Well, maybe not. Maybe just the first sentence.
Certainly the first first sentence.
This whole first
That's a
sentence
long
would come out.
sentence.
That would come out and replace it with this piece that he wrote.
I think
Yeah.
that's good.
The use. And then we talk about the construction. Oh, he did mention that,
I guess you start that.
he did mention that we should have, some criteria for the planning commission, rather than simply leaving it with compatible features, materials, or coloring. We use the words. What did I put in here? No, that's one of those, he's talking about having aesthetic compatibility with the neighborhood.
I don't know how complete our definition of accessory unit is, but, you know, Jerry mentioned just a minute ago, living quarters on that accessory building. In my mind, if there's living quarters associated with it, it's no longer an accessory unit, it's a principal structure. And, you know, what we don't want is somebody,
Building a garage and moving into.
well, building a garage and then renting it out as a VRBO.
Yeah.
By putting a bedroom and a bathroom and, you know, something else on the back of it.
I think that's addressed in the definitions of
Accessory dwelling unit,
accessory unit or something.
dwelling unit,
Yeah,
they're
because,
not permitted.
yeah, accessory dwelling units are not permitted. So, I just wanna make that clear because it's come up recently.
It'll come up a lot, I'm sure.
Solve a lot of problems if we could combine lots, wouldn't we?
It sure would.
Yeah, well,
How do you decide?
there's a lot of popularity for that move, but nobody knows how to do it.
It's been done.
I know.
Yeah, I wish I would have saved that text. I worked on this for off and on for all afternoon, trying to figure out what to do. I finally admitted I can't solve the problem.
Allow to rezone and replot.
Yeah.
Which would solve a lot of problems.
So we thought you said comparable.
Yeah, by adding the aesthetics and compatibility with the neighborhood.
That's too specific.
No, it's more generic. It says, you know, if you've got a neighborhood, and I'm thinking the neighborhood are the 200-foot affected neighbors, and they're all built with cedar siding of a painted color, then this property should kind of look like that. It shouldn't be, you know, painted, it shouldn't be built out of steel and 2 stories tall. Now, what you have here, or what you suggested in the past, that we've considered compatible construction features
They used to be.
and materials. Well, I think that's probably okay.
I think
That gives us enough.
That works for me.
Gives you some
Okay.
latitude, but it also
Well,
would allow you to rule out certain things.
it allows the planning commission in their hearing to decide, your
What's
plans,
compatible.
it doesn't look like it fits. It doesn't fit for these reasons. I think of all kinds of examples where things would fit, but
Yeah, I mean, if somebody wanted to build a huge RV barn that holds 3 RVs, and so they'd have 3, 10 by 12 overhead doors on the front of a huge building, that would not be compatible with a residential.
Stick out like that.
okay, so this marked up text that we read through and talked about, I'll put at the beginning, and we'll replace that for the first sentence and the last sentence where he had a problem with us specifying the deed restriction is gonna be taken out. So that's how we'll modify 16.40. Okay, now we need to look at that text change we had in the R1. See what we can do with that. All right, where's the definition?
Easier for me to read up there than down here.
Okay, here we go. Okay, in the R1 text, It starts with the word however. Single family can be optionally constructed on 2 adjoining lots. Share the same street frontage with the principal building occupying 1 and detached. And I think that's a good sentence if we end it there or reference 1640.
Okay.
Because it says additionally, during the permit process, or move the rest of this over to 1640, because that way, you know, Dan encourages in the beginning, and when we do this, we want to have it in one section so it's clear and bold, and this text here for R1 could end up in 1640.
So would you say in all these cases, a conditional use plan is set forth in section 12 and section 1640? To reference it or something?
Well, that's what I was saying, take this text that's here, from here on down, and put it in 1640.
Oh, I was thinking of referencing 1640 in that section.
Okay,
Yeah, you could just put a reference in that paragraph that says,
So write my section 12 at and section 640?
Okay.
Possible?
all right. So this requirement then, additionally, the permit process to happen. So this violating the unit declaration of unit declaration of reservations. You also advise that we don't put that in there.
yeah. Because then it becomes arbitrary as to, you know, who gets granted something and who doesn't. If my neighbor asks for a conditional use permit and I object in the hearing because I don't like the guy, then he doesn't get his permit. But if my neighbor across the street applies for one, and I'm okay with that guy, and I don't object, then he gets his permit. It just makes it totally arbitrary.
And we only put in that sentence because we were gonna use the deed restriction, so it's appropriate.
Right.
Take it out.
So this text then about the property lines being crossed and the setbacks, does it really belong in defining R1 districts? No. Should it be over in 1640?
I thought that sentence was in there prior to any changes we made, wasn't it?
No, this was all added.
We added that
Yeah,
too?
yep.
So lot lines being crossed doesn't have anything to do with putting deed restrictions in there.
No. Well, it's just saying how to deal with that.
Did the lawyer have a problem with that?
He made no comment about this.
I would say that second dot there, the deed, about the deed restriction, we need to strike that.
Yeah, it needs to go away, but then what we're talking about is one of the following conditions for it to be granted. And we covered that, I think, in this language.
Yeah.
Must meet the following conditions.
See, the 2 dots was 2 ways to get it qualified, to get it passed and approved.
Yeah, one,
Being attached or
or,
you're not gonna sell it separate.
yeah, or,
I thought it'd have to be both of them.
No,
It's gotta be compatible.
Well, you could change the second dot to say something similar to appropriate assurances have been provided
Okay.
to the city that the units must be conveyed together.
If we do that, are we saying it
I
in two
would just
places?
reference that other section. Where we
Put the reference
say,
here?
yeah, just take that sentence out and say that the other condition is defined in section 12 or, you know, something.
1640.
You know, whatever we were just discussing.
Okay. I know, I gotta fix that when I get done typing. As directed. Section 2.
Looks good.
I'm not sure 1640 has any of it.
And then following it? Okay. You're right, it doesn't.
Can you go back to 1640? So
Sure.
we see that again?
I don't have it typed out, but.
Let's see the changes. Yeah. So it says.
So we're gonna put this paragraph we talked about at the top.
Then scroll down.
Back to where we were.
Oh, that's all that's in there?
No, yeah, we're gonna put these 5 lines, this section that we typed out at the top.
Okay. Well, oh, you're gonna replace that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, you know, this is, we're trying to get this put together so we can get ready for a public hearing, so we'll have time to go through it again in the future. If we see something else wrong.
So it's basically just a paragraph here.
Yes,
With,
in place of the
with
first
a
sentence.
little bit extra added to it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Moving on, okay. So that covered those. And that was the R1 discussion. Fixing that. No problems here, and other changes we have to make. And all we did here was put the reference in. This is what we had to do. That's our different changes. Subject to the limitations here, and I think covers this, sends us to, you know, read further. Okay.
So what we're left without, however, with the attorney's ruling this way, is that item number 2 down there, we have nothing to hand them to say, this is what the language we want to see.
Right. Yes, we didn't talk about that specifically. So what a deed restriction or a bill of assurance would look like.
So how do we know if we get something that it's appropriate?
We'll have to ask the attorney, right, Dan? Because I don't know. I don't know what I haven't seen an example for one. I couldn't find one to read.
Yeah, and I don't think that the city should provide the example of the deed restriction. I think that the
So are we gonna
person,
run every one of these by our attorney?
I think that it starts with the person requesting, it's incumbent on the person requesting the permit to provide their assurance to us that the lot will never be sold separately. So if that means that a deed restriction is required, then they need to go and get an attorney and have that attorney draw up a deed restriction, and then they bring it to us. Now, we can choose to run it by our attorney and say, is this a satisfactory deed restriction? But I don't think we want to be in the business of giving legal advice.
I totally agree with you, totally agree, I'm just wondering. I'm guessing we're not gonna receive a whole lot of these, so maybe it's not gonna be an issue, so.
I disagree with that.
Yeah, I think I know of one for sure that's, in queue, because they've been here twice already wanting it, so.
Well, maybe we just do it like this and see how it goes and, see what the pattern shows over the next few ones we get. We can always go back and revisit.
Was a deed restriction filed in with the county?
In fact, if you get one or two done, the planning commission could say, well, this has been done in the past. To provide assurance.
So you don't know whether it's gonna work or not until the property is resold.
We're gonna have a file, if we issue a conditional use permit, we're gonna have a file on that. We should have a copy of that deed restriction
Oh, yeah,
in that file.
definitely.
Okay, we talked about outdoor storage, and we were struggling with 6 and 7 at the end of this document. And what was I gonna say? Oh, because of, when I did the minutes, it sounded different than the notes that I took during the meeting. So I pretty much drafted this stuff in yellow based on what I heard and what I wrote. So we talked about all permitted outdoor storage in C2 and IL zones shall be screened from all surrounding properties in accordance with the regulations of this section. The outdoor display of materials, equipment solely for retail sale or lease, such as automobiles, farm and garden supplies, and the like, shall not be required to be screened as set forth in this 1660. The alternate was to permitted outdoor storage items such as, but not limited to those listed in D6. So if we do this at the top, we don't need to have 6 and 7 that's at the bottom. And I'll scroll down to that. 6 says outdoor display materials, blah, blah, blah. I just copied that sentence into the criteria. And 7 says outdoor storage associated with single-family residence shall not be required. And we said
6 and 7.
we don't need 7 at all.
We don't need 6 either.
Yeah, we don't need 6 if we do what we do above by putting it as a subnote 1.
Yeah.
Just putting it in up there.
Yeah.
Do that.
Okay, so I'll take all this out of the document.
Except one.
Well, it's up here.
A1 you're gonna leave.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And take 6 and 7 off it.
Yeah. I'll take 6 off the bottom of it. Should have brought my mouse, it looks faster. Okay. Under signs, we had these notes from the last meeting of the things we wanted to cover, and Jerry hasn't said he didn't get them done. And Jerry, do you want relief and someone else take over that project? It's okay to ask if you want to.
Well, as you and I talked before, the research I've done, that 2 people on a body can work on legislation without violating the open meetings law.
And the concern I had was that, 2 of us getting together to work on policy that we're gonna consider is something we can't do in private. That we need to let people know we're going to do that and record it. And I have no problem doing it that way, but.
Well, I think it's something we need to ask the attorney, because if you look into it, it says that it's in a gray area that, if it's drafting, an ordinance or, something that will be voted on by the entire group, that is permissible. I mean, it's crazy.
I was asking.
I mean, I've done a lot of work on it.
It just, if the answer is that's permissible, it's gonna make a lot of other things a lot easier.
Hell, yes.
It is very, very difficult to work in an open meeting with just brainstorming.
Right.
I think we ought to ask him.
I mean, but I can pass it off to somebody, but, I mean, I've got, 5 or 6 ordinances from other communities.
Okay.
Driven around and looked at signs, and based on the definition of signs and some of these other ordinances, just about every sign in Holiday Island violates.
No, I'll ask Justin
Okay,
if,
we can collaborate.
yeah, if another committee member can help out a committee member trying to draft.
But there are no committees. If it's a one-person thing, that's not a committee.
That's true.
When I say committee, I'm talking about
Commission.
this commission.
Yeah, yeah.
It is a commission.
That would be good to know for future reference.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The only condition you're saying, Jerry, being that
I don't know.
it's gotta be something that's voted on later, so.
Right.
It's not like you're making a
I know, but
decision.
that's the same thing as, I can't discuss what's gonna be voted on in the next meeting. So,
Well,
but you're drafting what's gonna be.
let's
Yeah.
just see what he has to say. Everybody else does it, I guarantee you.
You're right.
I don't know any government body anywhere that doesn't do
Well,
so.
Congress
Lynn
does
and
it.
I met,
Well, don't go there.
Congress is exempt from.
Lynn and I met to get the table
The
put together.
zoning
the
table.
Zoning table put together.
So why was that legal?
We recorded it.
We, I think didn't I put an announcement out that
I
we were going to do
I
it?
think you did.
Yeah, that we were going to have it, and then we had a recording, and it's out there, it's available.
But we did it sitting over there in the office.
Well, I'd still like to kind of see what he has to say, because it's extremely tedious to not be able to
Well,
just have a
it'll also
collaboration.
cut down, I mean, take Pat's example, or when he did the, whatever the segment you did. You know,
I forget.
Outdoor storage.
outdoor
No.
storage.
No, outdoor parking, but that's okay.
But anyway,
Yeah, additional
it
parking.
got kicked back, and, you know, we still made some changes today.
I'm sure.
And
It'd been much easier for a couple of us to somebody said, well, that's stupid.
Yeah,
No,
just to
that-
kick the ideas around.
we're not making any policy. In fact, in this group, we're a step from making policy. A step removed from it, so,
I'll check with, Justin.
even though it's the same people.
Okay, we're in the section 21, off-street parking and loading. And
It's easier to take things out than to bring more stuff.
Here it is, short-term rentals. We added, or changed this to say that it's 2 per dwelling unit or 1 space per bedroom, whichever is greater. There weren't any other, all this.
All the green was.
Yes, and Pat came back with this, the first time you folks have seen this, in the yellow, that the right-of-way, required off-street parking may be provided within a setback, but must not interfere with any public right-of-way or interfere with any abutting public street. The language that's crossed out in blue was text he recommended we remove because it didn't make sense to most of us, all of us.
Including the author.
Okay. The only problem I had with this is, does it say if it's permitted within a setback, that I can park 5 cars in my front yard. Is that not on topic? Is it not part of the right of way? Or what, how do we tie the off-street parking and setbacks to right of ways? Or just simply say, it shall not be parked in the public right of way.
Sounds pretty clear.
Because the setback isn't in the right of way.
That one says, must be provided within a setback, but must not interfere with any public right of way. So that would preclude it being in your front yard, in the right of way portion of the front yard, right?
Which is only, I don't know.
This is the minimum number, we don't have any maximum.
You're right, there's nothing in there about maximum parking.
Does it say something up there about, parking behind the structure, behind the house?
I don't recall. This is computing it. This is location, design, on-site, except for otherwise required off-street parking shall be located on the same lot. It doesn't say side or behind.
There are some lots that have rear entry garages, I mean, garages. that
Well,
have
garage is
rear
fine,
entry.
but if you got a big lot, using it as a rental, I mean, and you get access to the back, I mean, you can park 10 cars back there, and the neighbor sitting out on his or her deck, you know, looking at a used car lot back there.
Yeah, I don't know how much of that we can restrict legally.
I think if it just said required off-street parking must not interfere with any public right of way. And interference could be our sightline, our corner sightline issues. That'd be the interference of the right of way. But not to say anything about may be provided within a setback. Unless I just don't, I don't get it, you know, someone needs to clear my fog. I'm just suggesting we trim this.
Is the definition of setback the distance to the structure?
It's from the property line to the front of the foundation wall of the house.
Or side, or rear. So there's side and rear setbacks.
Yeah, those are easements.
So if you took your street property line to the front of your house, so if it was within the setback, which that would be that space, but not interfering with any public right of way, so the public right of way would be what? That portion that runs along the street that maybe is a 10-foot area along the street?
It's from the property line on one side to the property line on the other side is all the right of way.
And the property line is between the street and the house, but, because that's the problem, that's where they can put utilities and stuff like that.
Yeah.
We don't have any on street parking.
I was gonna say, where could you park a car on the street?
Well, there's no shoulder
There's
anywhere.
no shoulder anywhere.
Not on any of our streets, hardly.
There aren't anything, well, and you might get over in the bluffs, I guess they got curves.
Consider bluffs made, but I
Huh?
don't think that last time I drove through the bluffs.
But a lot of
They
times
got-
people do
They
pull
do.
up
They're wide enough, they can.
off the street into that area along the street.
Well, I'd build up enough.
In the ditch, or
Even
water
take
range.
your yard, for instance, people probably park there.
Well,
They
I-
don't have any driveway space to park on.
This morning for 4 hours, my truck was parked across the street in the ditch. I wasn't 5 feet from it, so I was violating our nuisance ordinance that says we can't park so close to the road. But any closer, I would have been in the trees. So does it work to take this, maybe provided within a setback, but out of it?
Well, except we're requiring certain, up above, we're requiring certain numbers of parking, and where we're gonna permit them.
But this is reference to the right of way.
I know.
Okay. There's text up above.
When we're talking about, you must have, come on. my
Location
vision.
and design of off-street parking and loading spaces.
You must have a minimum number, a category
Yeah,
of parking spots.
right.
So we're talking about where are they going to be permitted?
Yeah, are we talking about residential or commercial here?
We're talking about both.
We're talking about both.
And we're talking about parking in right of way, which is
So
all
we're talking about,
the only place we got any parking in the right of way that I know is in the bluffs, they're in the commercial area. Otherwise, you're parking.
we're not talking about parking in a right of way, actually, that's the title of the meeting, but that right of way is where you cannot park.
Yeah.
I don't think we got any.
Well, I'm brainstorming here, because it's not making sense to me either, but we're requiring above certain numbers of parking spots for each category of things,
Right.
and then where are they gonna put these parking spots? All I'm trying to say is they have to be so that they don't interfere with the right of way in any.
Yeah.
But that's gonna be the setback.
I'm guessing that all those parking places that being occupied by that house being built up at the top of State Line are all would be illegal with this.
They're illegal now, I would imagine.
Yeah, they're violating our nuisance ordinance right now.
Oh, yeah, but, not as excited about temporary type things like construction.
Yeah, it's permanent.
There's permanent things, but we have to tell them where we have to say you have to have this many parking spots. We've got to give them some guidance as to where those can be,
Yeah,
and that's all I'm trying to do, and I'm not sure how to word
But
that.
you use that house as an example. I mean, there's
He's
very
not gonna
limited,
have any.
I mean,
he'll have a
There's very
maximum
limited
of
parking in
2
lots of
maybe in
places
his
in Holiday
driveway.
Island.
I mean, are they going down into the abyss?
Well, the new man breaks up, we're all going down.
Got a lot of parking space if you don't ever wanna get out.
You don't wanna see your-
Permanent parking spaces, I don't know, guys, I'm just,
I don't know what, the only, I don't know how to say what's acceptable. I only know in my mind what I want to avoid. I want to avoid having somebody, turn their house into a VRBO and have pickup trucks with boats lined up in the ditch all the way down the block because there aren't any parking spaces in front of the house. That's going on right now.
Can we leave this, reserved for the time being till we address the
What you got?
RBOs?
we got most of it reserved now, but
Well, I mean, just leave it that way.
But the right of way, it says you can park in the setback, and you interfere with the right of way.
And then the other issue is that, you know, we don't have to worry about snow removal here so much, but in the summertime when they're mowing the ditches, you know, you don't want to have to be driving around vehicles in front of every other house.
But you just take my house in front of my house from the road back, I filled in
It's 3-car
enough
riding
area you
and
can
2-car
park.
meet.
and it doesn't,
I wish I had.
Okay, so we can preserve the language here if we change this may to must. Required off-street parking must be provided within a setback and must not.
interfere with
Interfere.
public right of way. And so,
Change this to and.
right.
That work?
I can
So
park
we
3 or 4 cars up
I'm
there.
not-
Yeah,
I'm not
I
sure
would,
change
I would
it.
put it in that way, and then I would ask people to test that next time you're driving around and see how many cars are parked in the right of way. And it's 100% harmless, and it may be the only way that the people that, you know, the husband and wife and teenage kid can park their cars in their yard.
Yeah, there's a lot
Is
of
there-
property that's physically, restricted or not possible to meet these conditions.
You know, there's at least 2 houses right on Holiday Island Drive that have parking. Well, one of them has 4 vehicles parked, but they're all in the driveway.
Yeah.
But there's one further down towards State Line,
Wonder what they
where
use
they
the
paved
garage
all the
for.
way across the front of the house. They park cars all the way across. And they're not in the right of way, they're on their own property. It's, you know, it doesn't have grass growing up or anything, it's not really a nuisance, it may not be the most attractive thing, but, it's not affecting anybody,
Gets the job done.
yeah. So that would be okay there, because they're within the setback. They're not parked in the right of way. So, you know, just drive around and see if we would find ourselves knocking on a lot of doors, you know, in totally harmless situations, or if that does truly deal with the problem and only the problem.
Can they, if they can't meet this requirement, can they get a conditional use permit?
Most cities have, well, I don't wanna say most, but a lot of places where I live didn't allow overnight parking on the street, but you could get a permit for like 3 days if you were gonna have visitors or something like that.
I don't know if we provided for that.
We haven't in here.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Because our streets aren't wide enough. Most parking in the streets in Holiday Island would block the right of way.
Right. No, I'm
Yeah.
saying, if we deemed that it
If somebody wanted
wasn't gonna
to,
hurt much,
if somebody wanted to
it was
park
out in the boonies maybe.
in the right of way just over the weekend while their family was here, and I can see where we would issue a permit, because,
Not in the right of way,
why not?
because they're blocking the road.
Right.
The right of way is the road.
We can't go street by street. I mean, Holiday Island Drive, that's a big problem, but out there, it's not nearly, we can't go street by street, and make a different rule for every, you have to do it by zoning, not
I
by
don't see
street.
how you can put anybody in the right of way.
I mean, they wouldn't, maybe they wouldn't be exclusively in the right of way. Maybe they'd be partly in their setback area and partly in the right of way. Yeah, I can park a vehicle in my yard off of the street. You know, it'd be in the right of way,
No,
but also,
it's in the setback.
no. There is a space between the paved road and the property line.
Right.
It's about 10 feet in most cases.
Well, that's where my parking is.
So
So that's.
you're gonna have to move if we pass this.
That's-
That's what I'm saying. Test it.
Well, it depends on what you're calling setback and what you're calling right of way. Right of way is the road.
No.
Okay, so
Yeah, my understanding of right of way is 10 feet off of the road, or from the middle of the road, 15 feet.
Setback is a measurement, right of way is
Setback
a
is-
legal term.
setback is.
The setback is
Is
how
my
far
property.
the right of way goes.
Setback includes right of way and personal property, right?
No,
Setback is from the right of way line.
the property line is the setback.
Okay.
Can we beat this horse to death?
I went down to next page,
Lynn's done.
Then moved on, okay.
and I left it with must be provided within a setback and must not interfere. So I changed the may, must here, and I changed this to and. The read
We're all
okay?
gonna drive around.
All right,
My interpretation of right of way.
And see, at my house, I can't park in the right of way because I have a ditch that prevents anybody from parking there.
Right away, but I'd never get my car back out.
Yeah.
Okay.
in this section O, we just added the text that, and shall not be used for temporary storage. We're talking about off-street parking and loading spaces. We're not gonna store some materials on those parking spaces.
I'm telling you, we don't fix everything at once. One drawing.
That might pertain to commercial probably, right?
Likely, yes.
Yeah.
And we had this text in the boat and trailer and recreational living, that there's an exception. Recreational vehicles may be inhabited by visitors to an occupied residence for a period not to exceed 7 days.
Except at my house.
Well, all right. And 28 is just a rewrite or a reformatting of the outline, so we had no changes there to review. Flow charts, the end of 28. Okay, that's all I have. That's all we have to discuss about changes.
Yeah, do
So what's the next step from here?
Well, the discussion has to be, are we going to have a special meeting to consider signs? If we're gonna include all of this in one public hearing, or we're gonna have 2 public hearings? Because we have enough for this that we can proceed to public hearing for the stuff that we've done today.
I think we ought to just proceed with what we've already got done, a bit later.
Okay?
I mean,
I do too.
I don't want to procrastinate any longer.
I
We
don't
have
think
to.
the signage is gonna kill us
That's
not
gonna
to
be
have it for a while.
Okay, we'll work on that.
Correct.
So then, tentatively, then we can schedule, we'll be scheduling a public hearing before our regular meeting in February. Just for the timing of the newspaper notices and that kind of thing. Okay,
And just to refresh our memory, after the public hearing, when does this go into effect?
then, once the public hearing comes and if the planning commission adopts this, it recommends it to the city council. The city council then puts it into ordinance format for, up to 3 readings.
Okay.
So it goes in effect after the city council approves it and passes it.
Okay, the hearing, then the ordinance, then to the city council.
The hearing recommends it to the city council, who would,
Puts it in
considers an ordinance.
Okay. So we should have this by March?
Well, if the city council,
If it was one reading.
does it in 3 readings as an emergency, or in 1 reading,
Yeah, okay. Or we could decide to do 3, yeah.
it could be 3 spread over time. It doesn't say they have to be 3 months apart. or
And then
a month
there's
apart.
a 30-day challenge period after the ordinance is passed.
Okay, that's all I have, Mr. Mayor, for this topic of old business.
Okay, Back to the agenda. New business. Establishing commission officers. Do you have that resolution?
I do. Resolution HICPC 23-1, a resolution establishing the Holiday Island City Planning Commission officers for calendar year 23. Whereas the newly elected city council has the addition of one council member as of January 2nd, 2023. And whereas the city council serves as the Holiday Island City Planning Commission as permitted by Arkansas Statute ACA 1456-404. And whereas the Holiday Island City Planning Commission has been meeting since August of 21 with the same officers. And whereas the Arkansas Statute 1456-406 directs the mayor to serve as chair of the HICPC and for the HICPC to elect a vice chair and such other officers as it may require. Now be it resolved by the Holiday Island City Planning Commission, the mayor of Holiday Island shall serve as chair of the HICPC. Members of the HICPC shall nominate and elect by roll call vote from among the commissioners for the office of vice chair. The vice chair shall be elected during the first yearly meeting and serve for the duration of the calendar year. The vice chair can serve multiple terms. The vice chair shall serve as chair in the absence of the chair during all HICPC meetings. The commissioner shall nominate and elect by roll call vote from among the commissioners for the office of HICPC secretary. The secretary shall be elected during the first yearly meeting and serve for the duration of the calendar year. The secretary can serve multiple terms. The secretary shall serve as the HICPC chair in the absence of the chair and vice chair during all HICPC meetings. The secretary shall attest to all approved HICPC resolutions by his or her signature. The secretary shall keep a public record of all business resolutions, transactions, findings, and determinations of the HICPC. The secretary shall also serve the Board of Zoning Adjustment by keeping a public record of all business transactions, findings, and determinations of the BOZA. The secretary may or may not be one of the 3 appointed BOZA board members. Pass and approve this date.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve resolution HICPC R23-001?
So moved.
Jerry made a motion to approve the resolution. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Ken seconded it. Is there any discussion? Roll call vote?
Chairman Keys,
Yes?
Vice Chair Pittman,
Yes.
Commissioner Elwood,
Aye.
Commissioner Graves,
Aye.
Commissioner Kuhn,
Yes.
Commissioner Mills,
Aye.
and Secretary Dumas all abstain.
You'll abstain.
Now we gotta have an election.
You're gonna vote present? The resolution passes. Now I will open the floor for nominations for HICPC Vice Chair.
Mr. Mayor, or Mr. Chairman, I nominate Lynn Dumas for a second term as secretary.
Okay,
What are
let's,
you doing here?
He's doing vice chair.
we'll do the Vice Chair first. That's the order it is in the resolution.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, it wasn't.
In the agenda.
All right,
Oh, Jerry Vice Chair. Okay, I nominate, Jerry Pittman for Vice Chair.
Jerry's been nominated. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Are you willing to serve if elected?
Yeah.
Okay, roll call
We only
vote.
missed one meeting, I think.
Yeah,
For Vice Chair, Chairman Keys,
oh, I should have asked, are there any other nominations?
No.
All right, and the nominations are closed. Roll call
for Vice Chair, Chairman Keys,
vote. Here, yes.
Vice Chair Pittman,
Aye.
Commissioner Elwood,
Aye.
Commissioner Graves,
Aye.
Commissioner Kuhn,
Aye.
Commissioner Mills,
Aye.
Secretary Dumas, aye.
All right, we have a vice chair. Thank you, Jerry. Now we'll open nominations for secretary.
What I said.
You're up.
Jerry nominates Lynn.
I'll second.
And Pat seconded it. Any other nominations? We'll close nominations, roll call vote,
For the secretary, Chairman Keys,
yes.
Vice Chair Pittman,
Aye.
Commissioner Elwood,
Yes.
Commissioner Graves,
Yes.
Commissioner Kuhn,
I,
Commissioner Mills,
Aye.
and Dumas abstains.
Present.
Okay, we have a secretary, thank you, Lynn.
And we have to do this annually, just to remind everyone.
You're doing a fantastic job. All right, going back to the agenda.
We're gonna give him a raise.
Yes.
Give him 20%.
Yeah.
20% raise.
I don't know, the CIP is only 8,
All right, moving on to public comments. Anything from the general public? Thank you for coming. I'm sure that we had you on the edges of your seats. So.
Exciting meeting.
All right, commissioner comments or hearing none, scheduling, next regular meeting will be February, regular meeting.
Second Tuesday of February.
Yep.
17th or 18th.
It'll be the 14th.
Anything else?
second Tuesday, the 14th.
It'll be the 14th, I think.
Motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Jerry seconded it.
Aye.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.